Hi everyone, it's Craft IQ Challenge time again for the month of May, and I have decided to scrapbook this darling picture of my grandparents from many years ago. And so I'm really excited to have a scrapbook page with both of them in it that I can kind of journal some of my favorite memories about them, and then that way my children will kind of remember. My grandpa did pass away a few years ago, so they don't really know him or remember him, but my great-grandma just celebrated, or my grandma, not my great-grandma, their great-grandma, just celebrated her 100th birthday, so I thought that this would be a really nice picture just to kind of have a page for. So part of this challenge is picking a theme paper that has nothing to do with your photo. So I've gone through my stash and I found this Chamel paper called Sparkle City that I got at Joann's, who knows when. And it's got a bunch of cameras on it, and I chose it because the purple in my grandpa's shirt totally matches some of the purple that is in the paper. And then I just again went through my stash and found a couple of other papers. This one I thought I would use these really pretty turquoisey green hearts that match those cameras. And this is from Maggie Holmes called Flourish. And then I am a close to my heart maker, so in addition to those random papers that I had in my stash, I went through and found some close to my heart papers as well. This is from the Every Little Thing collection, which is retired. I really love that sapphire color with that floral on there, and I thought that I could use some of this in my layering behind my photos. And then this is just a sheet of the mix-in paper from last year, again with that sapphire color, and so that's kind of where I thought I would go with that. I also needed to find a couple of pocket cards that I'm going to have to use because that's part of the challenge as well. And honestly, I think I might be one of the only scrapbookers out there who doesn't really have any collection of pocket cards, so that was challenging for me for sure. I have one set of pocket cards, that is it, and so I'm very slowly working my way through them. I've had them for probably about 10 years, but I did pull these ones that I thought I could cut apart because some of the colors in them seem to kind of match. And so I will definitely layer those up behind my photo and use them somehow. So that's kind of what I have chosen to use in my photo. And let's go ahead and get started creating. Okay, so I'm ready to begin working on this layout. Now I knew right away one of the things that I wanted to do to make sure that I had at least half of that pattern paper on my layout was that I wanted to cut it into a big triangle and basically make a big diagonal from the top left corner to the bottom right corner. And I walked around my house for quite a while looking for something that was long enough that I could use as a straight edge, and I didn't find anything that was satisfactory. And to go from corner to corner is longer than 12 inches, so my ruler wasn't going to work. And so I really kind of thought about that for a while, and ultimately I decided just to tape my paper onto my Versamat so that I could make sure everything was lined up and straight. And then I used a piece of string and went corner to corner again so that I can make sure that it was straight and actually hitting corner to corner. And then I used that string as a guide for my ruler so that I could move my ruler along where it needed to be. I'm sure there's probably an easier way to cut that big diagonal on a 12 by 12 piece of paper, but I'm not sure what it is. So if you have any ideas, I would appreciate some comments below if you've ever had to do that, and maybe you just had something long enough in your house that you could use, and that would probably be the easiest thing. But I made it work, and then I just drew that pencil line on there as a guide so that I could cut it out by hand. When it comes to triangles and math and things like that, it's really not my forte. I'm a high school English teacher, so give me a poem or a piece of literature and I can figure it out for you. Triangles, not so much, but I made it work. So I'm going to cut out, like I said, half of that pattern paper, and I just need that bottom left corner, and I'm going to place it on top of this other piece of pattern paper. And I didn't really have too many pencil marks left, but I just kind of made sure that those are all off of there. And then I'm going to pull in this sapphire piece of cardstock of pattern paper, and it is from an older retired mix-in collection from Close to My Heart. And it's just this really pretty like tone-on-tone sapphire pattern. And so I really liked how it was dark, and then I had the white and the busyness of the camera piece over on the bottom corner. And so I just went ahead and glued that down. All right, so I'm going to start adding some layers underneath my photo of my grandparents. And one of my new favorite tricks is to use some regular old tissue paper, for presents. And so I just kind of have a little stash of it in my craft desk drawer, and then I pull it out, and then I just cut around my photo, and I usually use that as my first layer. It's been my new trick, and I really enjoyed using it. I love how organic it looks because it's really hard to cut tissue paper straight, and so I just kind of embrace that, right? Like you want it to be a little bit rough and, you know, kind of an uneven cut, and it gives it that really cool texture and just a little something to kind of make it stand out on that first layer of actual pattern paper. All right, and then my second layer is going to be another piece of sapphire pattern paper, and this is one from a retired collection from close to my heart called Every Little Thing. It's that gorgeous sapphire color with some white roses printed on it, and it's super pretty. I've kind of been hoarding it for a while, but I thought a picture of my grandparents was worth using my pretty paper on for sure. And then my third layer is going to be that other piece of pattern paper that has those emerald green turquoise looking hearts on it. And I just made sure that when I put it down that I was going to have hearts kind of showing all the way around all the edges so that it wasn't any kind of funky white space, and that you could see that they were definitely hearts. And so that's kind of what I was doing there. And then another thing that I need to do is to use a pocket card. And so I really just kind of pulled out ones that, you know, I liked the pattern paper on them, the colors matched. And so that was just kind of what I was looking at. I thought maybe I could use it as an additional layer, even though I've already hit 3 underneath my photo. And I really kind of struggled with that for a little while because, again, I didn't follow a pattern or anything or, you know, a picture on Pinterest. This is all coming out of my head. And so I was having a hard time kind of knowing where to put things and exactly what I wanted to do. And that to me, that photo was getting a little bit lost. And so I decided after kind of fussing with it for a while to set it aside for a little bit and to move on to my splatters because those were going to have to go down anyway before I could put anything else on the page. And I knew for sure what I was going to do for that step. So I just kind of set it aside and moved on to this. So this is some Dina Wakley gloss spray and it's in the night color. And rather than actually spraying it out of the bottle, I just unscrewed the top and then kind of tapped my finger against it so that that gloss spray was coming out of that little dropper, the little straw dropper thing. And it looks really pretty. One of the things I like about that gloss spray is not only does it leave a cool shine and look to those splatters, but it also dries very quickly. Like I think maybe only 2 or 3 minutes went by. And it's super easy to clean up. I had just put my all-purpose mat down. I grabbed a baby wipe and wiped it right up. See, about 2 minutes have gone by. It's totally dry, ready to move on. So I decided to take one of those other pocket cards and cut it. So again, because I really just kind of wanted the color and the pattern paper that was in it, not the actual card itself. And I thought maybe I would kind of have that peeking out from somewhere. Again, I'm not really sure. I kind of fussed around with it for a little bit, but I think I'm going to use that little rounded piece and just have it peeking out from under my photo somewhere. Eventually it'll find its home. And then I'm going to pop up this layered set of papers that are underneath my photo. I'm going to pop it up on some foam tape. I'm not going to peel the backing off of those pieces just yet, so that way I can still kind of move things around. But I knew I was going to have it popped up, so I went ahead. And again, for me, this was really kind of a struggle. I had to kind of walk away from this layout a couple of times and, you know, come back to it over the course of several days because I wasn't really entirely sure what I was going to do with it and where I wanted things to be. It wasn't quite coming together how I wanted it to be. And I really wanted it to be special because it's a photo of my grandparents and I wanted it to be perfect, you know. And so I was really kind of having a hard time, and you can see some of that thought process going on here as I keep like moving things around and fussing and I'm not sure. And I wanted it to be right, but it just didn't look, there was something about it that just wasn't kind of working when I have the photo right here. I do end up moving it. I don't know. It was like kind of getting lost. I thought there was like too much sapphire if I had the photo right there. And so it's not going to end up being there, but at this point I didn't know that yet. And so, like I said, it's still just a lot of fussing and trying to like add some different layers and see what would work. I don't know. I hope other people probably scrapbook this way as well, and it's not just me, but you know, I don't know. And then that was a tag that I had cut from another pocket card that I didn't end up using. I thought maybe I could, as you know, kind of tucked underneath that photo, but it didn't end up working. I tried for a long time, but eventually it didn't make it. And so I just kind of saved it for a different project. All right, so here I have decided that I'm going to go ahead and edge distress some of these papers with some ink pads. And the camera paper is not from Close to My Heart. And one of the things I love about, usually I'm using Close to My Heart paper, is I have coordinating ink pads. So I know everything is going to match. And so I was just kind of trying to make my best guess what color turquoise green that was. And I ended up going to an older ink pad. This is a retired color. And I picked Juniper, which is kind of a green, but not really very green. It does have a little bit of a turquoise blue kind of hue to it, and it ended up working out perfectly. So that is a retired color, but Juniper is the color ink pad that I ended up using, and I just edge distressed every single piece of paper that was going to be in that layer. All right, so now I also needed to use some die cuts, which was easy because I use my die cuts all the time. These are these circles thin cuts from Close to My Heart, and I just took that smallest circle, it's about 1 inch, and I cut out a whole bunch of them, and then I'm just going to stack a couple of them together and then cut them in half with my scissors. And my idea is to just kind of create a little scalloped border along that diagonal, because like I said, I like having those two patterns there together, but that line was a little plain to me, a little bit of a harsh transition from one pattern paper to the other. And so I knew I was going to have to do something along there. I didn't know if I was going to have like a row of embellishments or something, maybe flowers, but I knew I was going to do something along that line. And one of the other parameters that I needed to use for this challenge was to have a repeating row of elements. And so I decided to just go ahead and do those half circles as my repeating row of elements. And so that checked that off of my list. And then I just cut the excess off of the back side of the page. And then I still think that it helps to have those white circles there, but it still was a little bit of a dark, stark contrast between the two. And so I wanted something else to kind of soften up that move from the pattern paper to the sapphire paper. So I pull out my piercing tool from Close to My Heart, and this is an old retired stitching guide ruler that I have in my stash. And I'm just using it to poke some holes along that very edge, right where the two papers meet. So it's at the bottom of those little half circles. And I just poked some holes for myself. And then I pulled out a needle and some purple DMC embroidery thread. And then I am just going to stitch a line of purple thread from corner to corner. And that really was kind of that touch that it needed. And once I was done with that part, I was very happy with the way it looked. And it seemed to kind of transition well. And I thought that the purple thread really just kind of pulled in the purple from my grandpa's shirt and the purple that was in some of those cameras. I was really happy with the way that worked. So the stitching that I did actually do a chain stitch just to kind of give it a little bit more substance. And I used 4 strands of thread, again, just to kind of give it a little bit more bulk and substance so that you would really definitely see the color of that thread all the way through. And it took me about 15 minutes, so don't worry, I won't make you watch all of it. But it did take me a while to do that hand stitching, but it was fun. I was just listening to music and having a good time. All right, so I'm ready to kind of start thinking about the embellishments here, and I've gone through my stash and pulled out a bunch of different things. This snowflake from these old White Pines buttons I think will probably work because, again, it's in that same turquoisey, bluish, greenish color, and it doesn't look too snowflakey, so I think I'm going to use that, and then I pulled a couple other things that I thought I might use as well. I know I'm going to do some stamping. I always do stamping anyway on my layouts, but that was definitely one of the things that I had to check off my list. And so I pulled out this stamp set from Close to My Heart called Desserts a la Whirl, and it is current, and I will make sure to link that below. And it has all these really cute sayings on it, including "you are," and then you can kind of fill in, the best, so sweet, things like that. Fun, funny. And so I just kind of used the "You Are the Best" sentiment from there. And I mixed and matched them because I really like how "You Are" is in one font and "the best" is in another one. And then off camera on a different day, I did come back in and stamp a couple of hearts around that as well. Like I said, I kind of did a lot of coming and going to this layout as I was trying to figure out what I was doing. So you don't see the hearts happen here on camera, but I did stamp those on there as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my journaling on here. So I'm going to use, this is a stamp set called Details I Love, and I think it is still current. If it is, I'll link it below. But it has these 3 journaling lines on there, and so I like to use those to make sure that I have some nice straight lines. And I'm going to stamp those in sapphire ink as well, just like I did the sentiment. Now, it's kind of a floppy stamp because it's just the 3 little lines. And so if ever you have something like that, what I have found works really well is just to kind of almost like fling it onto your table, and it'll straighten itself out when it naturally kind of is on its own. And then you can put your block on top of it and pick it up that way. And so that way it's much easier to put it on straight. Okay, after much fussing, I have decided that I definitely want to have my picture down here a little bit more so that it feels a little bit less busy to me. And like I said, it was getting a little bit lost up here in that blue sapphire. So I think I'm going to do that. And off camera, I have pulled in these white flowers. These are actually from the front of the Valentine's Day card that my husband gave me this year. And I asked him, I said, can I keep those and tear that card apart? And he said yes. He only signed his name on the inside. It didn't have anything really written in it, so it was not such a big deal. And then I think I'm going to use this little pin that says Bliss, and that will take care of my pre-made title or word. And then I also used my stamp and thin cuts from the Simple Floral set, and I went ahead and stamped these leaves and sprigs. I used the grape color for this and more of that juniper color for the leaves. And I just did that to go behind those flowers. So this is that Simple Floral stamp set. And then I've already added my journaling because I knew it would be kind of hard to write on it once I had it over top of this stitching. So I'm really just kind of at the point where I need to start adhering things down and making sure that I've got all of those boxes checked off of my list. And so that's what I'm going to go ahead and start doing here. And I'll speed it up so that you guys don't have to watch all of it in real time. Okay, like I said, I really am just kind of at the final stages here of gluing everything down, and I am so happy that I decided to move this whole photo cluster down onto that bottom left corner. It really was getting lost up in the sapphire area, and I think it kind of helps to cut down on the busyness of the camera pattern paper, and I would like it so much better down here. And so I just have tucked that journaling piece underneath, and then I kind of layered it so that there's still a little spot on the bottom left corner of that journaling piece where I'm going to put my little snowflake button later. And now I'm just kind of putting on the flowers, and I'm popping up part of them on foam tape since the whole photo layer part is also up on foam tape, and that way it's at the same level. So some foam tape to half of the flower and the other half with just adhesive. And then I'm tucking these flowers, or I'm sorry, the leaves underneath my flowers. And, you know, I'm really happy that I decided to stamp those sprig part of the leaves in that purple color, which is the grape ink from Close to My Heart. I like how it's kind of unexpected, and it just pulls out a little bit more of that purple that is in the paper and my grandpa's shirt. I don't remember to do it very often, but when I do, some of my favorite floral clusters are when I stamp like either the flowers or the leaves and things of that nature in some unexpected colors. And I just think that it looks so pretty, and it just really kind of makes everything pop. And then, like I said, I like the unexpectedness of it. And so I like having that purple and even that juniper color that I stamped the leaves in. It is a green, but it's not the kind of green that you would think of when you think of leaves. It's a little bit more muted and a little bit more blue than that. And so I just was really happy with having these flowers on here and these leaves, and I thought that that turned out perfectly. And so now I'm going to pull in my snowflakes so that I can make sure that I have crossed that off my list. And this is an old button from the White Pines assortment from many, many years ago from Close to My Heart. And it's kind of old, so I just added a little bit of extra adhesive onto the back of it to make sure that it was going to stay put. And then I just put it in that bottom left corner of my journaling where I left a little bit of space there on the paper. And then I'm going to put this pin that I have that says Bliss on it. And I'm just going to put it underneath of my photo, and that way I can take care of my pre-made title or word. And then I wasn't really thinking before I went ahead and adhered that whole photo mat down, because I probably should have poked a hole through it first rather than trying to do this last. And so I struggled with this for a little bit because I'm like, well, it's got to go through the paper. I mean, it is a pin, right? And I was just hoping I wasn't about to stab my finger or ruin my layout at this late stage of the game. So, but I got it on there. And then another thing I needed to check off my list was a puffy sticker. Literally, that is the only bit of puffy stickers that I own. I don't really have very many of them. And so I just pulled a blue one out and tucked it under the flower. There, it's on there. I've done it. That's all I really needed to do. But it's not really very prominent because it doesn't match or really go with anything, but that's okay. And then I have these old acrylic dots from an old Halloween collection, actually, called Cats and Bats. And that green just kind of matched some of those hearts and other colors that are on there. And so I'm just kind of sprinkling those around the page, and that's pretty much it. So I hope you enjoy some of the close-ups here. You can see some of those things that I have done. There's that chain link stitching that I did along the edge, so you can finally see that a little bit closer. And some of those floral clusters. I'm so glad that my husband didn't mind I tore apart my Valentine's Day card, because I've been hanging on to these flowers for a couple of months now. I knew that they were worth saving and reusing somewhere. And so that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching.